Good morning. My name is Kat Pullen, and I have the pleasure of being the host for our Maximo webcast today on the topic of Vendor Punchout Catalog. I would like to thank everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend today's webcast. I truly hope you find the content both informative and valuable to your organization. For those of you that are new to the Ontracks Maximo webcast series, we offer an educational webcast each month on a topic of interest, typically suggested by our clients or past webcast attendees. The purpose is simply to provide some insight into the capabilities of Maximo. Sometimes this is a very specific function or sometimes a broader topic. If you have any suggestions for future broadcasts, please feel free to email them to us at webcast@ontracksconsulting.com. Today's presenter is Patrick Conity. He is the managing consultant based in St. Louis, Missouri. And with that, I'll turn it over to Patrick.
Thank you, Kat. This month I have the pleasure of delivering our Vendor Punchout Catalog Integration webcast. Today the agenda, I'll be doing an introduction. We'll be talking about what a Vendor Punchout Catalog is as a concept. I'll go through how that process hooks into Maximo. We'll be covering a live demo and then future capabilities. At the end of the call, we'll be opening up for questions. A little bit about myself. My name is Patrick Conity, and I'm a managing consultant with Ontracks Consulting. I've been in the IT industry for 15 years, and the last 7 of those with Ontracks. My project experience is primarily around the industry add-ons for utilities, so transmission and distribution, as well as oil and gas. Recent project completions include asset health insights, mobile implementation, along with operator logs, and management of change. And I am based here in St. Louis. So high level, what is a vendor punchout? We take out Maximo and the supplier site and everything else. The concept is your procurement agent has a means to connect to the buyer's website. So how are they able to perform e-commerce or e-procurement activities and then bring that back into the main procurement application? And then the next step is, what does that look like within Maximo? So everyone has a slightly different process, but we're setting this slide here as a baseline. For today's demonstration, I'll be starting with a purchase requisition record. I know some people may start with a PO or they may have a different process. Standardizing this for the demo is the main purpose. We'll come back to this slide later on, but the concept is whatever your existing process is, the punch-out should be able to hook into that. So removing that manual step and going out to the supplier's website to get real-time information, our demarked by our dotted line there, and then coming back into your existing process. The demo that I'm showing today was configured on the purchase requisition and the purchase order applications. Concept is if you have an existing or a punch-out catalog that can be connected to, we're going to show an additional button. So from there, instead of adding a new line or selecting items from your requisition, you can launch the catalog directly from Maximo. So without using any third-party solutions, we're able to temporarily move from Maximo into that supplier's site, display real-time availability and pricing, and then bring those back into Maximo from the shopping cart as populated lines on the requisition or the purchase order. The whole concept behind this solution is trying to automate some of the processes. So how do we reduce the amount of phone calls back and forth, making sure something can get delivered on time, documenting correct pricing, and eliminating manual entry errors. Benefits really kind of live on the buyer side, right? Or the requester. So how do we increase the accuracy? So fewer revisions. Again, less phone calls back and forth, ensuring that the supplier is able to fulfill the right order without having to go and ask additional questions. Using your client, your actual account on the supplier site. So those contract prices will be honored. Then being able to determine what the quantities are. And this is important, right? To kind of expand on this. There's no longer a need, if you don't want to store 48,000 items in your item master or whatever it would be, because we're relying, in this case, on the Grainger website to store that, right? And they're going to have the real-time information. But if you do want to store some of it, we're also bringing that back with the catalog code and the manufacturing information and description. My favorite part about this solution is the relatively quick time it can be implemented, right? And some of that is the solution. The other part of it is the training. So your supplier and your requester are already familiar with Maximo, as they're likely filling out requisitions or purchase orders today. And then most people are familiar with e-commerce, your buyer specifically with your existing supplier's website. So the training is minimal, the solution is straightforward, and we're working towards automation. As mentioned earlier in this example, the concept is starting in Maximo, right? So this is what it looks like. We're hooking in again. We're navigating out to the Grainger site. We're building that cart. And once we have it ready and defined on what we need for that requisition, we can come back into Maximo and populate those line items. As I compare a day in the life or a single requisition with a purchaser who has the Punchout and doesn't, this kind of highlights the streamlined process. So I'm able to go in from Maximo out to the vendor site, get the information I need, and come back in. Minimal manual entry. When I compare that to without the vendor site, I'm running multiple tabs in my browser, right? I've got to pause, make a phone call, and confirm, is this the right model number? Or do I have an old catalog that I'm working from? What is the actual availability? Or as a requester, maybe I don't know the right price and I can't remember that phone number to call, but I need to get this in, right? So again, there's an additional amount of steps and possible chance for potential failure and rework. All right. And now I'm going to go over to our Punchout demo. Come over here to our vendor catalog. This new button is going to launch the Punchout information. So before I click on this, I'll talk a little bit about what's going to happen. It'll go into the Grainger website. So we're not opening multiple tabs because we're going to be able to return back into Maximo with this solution. So I click the button here, and immediately I launch the Grainger website, right? We can see that I'm on the Ontracks test account, so I know that I have my preferred pricing listed to our company. And I have a couple different options. So as I mentioned off screen here, I've got my email, our example from the maintenance manager, and we need a couple flanges and gaskets. So unfortunately, we had to go through another job like this recently, and I have that item number or the catalog number for Grainger on my desk. So I can, one option here, I can go into bulk order pad. I can type in my value. Right, I know I need 2 of these. I can add these to cart, and here we go. I have I have a flange set up here with my quantity of 2, current pricing, and total. I need to add a couple more things here before we check out, so I'm going to go look for the gasket that we need. I don't know my bulk order number or my catalog number for everything. I can just use the search here for gasket, return, right, and then go into my subsections here to pick out what's needed. Looks like the right one. As I click that, I'm going to need 2 of these. Well, So I'm continuing to build my cart, and I'm going to add one last item. The faucet broke in the bathroom, so now we have to go in and add that as well. Unfortunately, this is a common thing that has happened. So I'm now going to type in my number here. All right, and so I have my I add that to cart. Now that I have everything ready, I can view my cart. Okay, just looking at my products in here, right? I had 2 flanges, 2 gaskets, and then this last minute add-on for the faucet. The job is slated to be installed on or ran on Monday, right? So I need to enter my zip code here to make sure that that's even possible. And there we go, right? So my availability has been updated. I can see that each one of these will be delivered as expected. I know that my pricing is all correct, right? Because the system's entering it for me, and I'm ready to submit my cart. So at this point, when I submit cart, I'm going to take that trip back into Maximo. So each one of these should fill a line item on my PR. Granger's reminding us here too, right? This is important because this is, while we've gotten their pricing and are linking into their procurement system, right? They still need approval from us to say, please initiate this order and fulfill it. So that's what this last message is saying here. I hit yes, and now I'm returning back to the message if you saw it briefly, my PR. So I have 2 materials on here for my PR. We can see that there is no item listed on here, but if I dig into these, I can see specifically what's coming over and obviously the description, but we've got the manufacturer, the model, and here's the catalog number that I had referenced earlier on my bulk order. Same thing for the gasket. And then line item 3, here's what I wanted to show you. So this is already an item that we store within Maximo and maintain. So that came over and identified that specifically as an existing item. Right? Still pulling over the catalog code so it can be referenced on the supplier site. All my pricing and unit costs have populated here as well. Again, removing those steps of manual entry as we go through. So this is where we would hook back into your existing procurement process. If there's a review here, you can submit that based on total cost or whatever that would be. As mentioned, we're going to revisit this slide. We've gone through our vendor selection. We've hit this dashed line of vendor punch-out. Right now, it's again going through that review and an approval process. And based on that message we got at the end for submitting cart, we still need to send that approved PO to the vendor for fulfillment. So this is, like I said, an exciting enhancement or solution that we've put together, and we look to continue adding to this. Future enhancements in the roadmap are how do we get that approved PO back to the vendor. Those of you who have seen our prior webcast, I believe the title was Cool Configs, we have the ability to generate a PO detail report. And then, sorry, we've got a little bit of feedback on the line here. You can see that we've created a PO details email to vendor with that BERT report on there, so that's coming. It needs to be the integrated into this solution, right? What else can we do to relaunch the catalog, update existing pricing, and then give the vendor a solution to submit their invoices, right? So those can be integrated back in to Maximo. Other options we're considering, right, is how do you plan work order or plan jobs from the work order and do direct issue, and maybe with a contracts module looking at blanket TOs and releases against that. And the last thing specific to Granger, again, would be the vending machine replacement. So if you have a satellite storeroom with the sandwich style vending machines, if anybody remembers those, right? But from your tools and supplies from Granger, creating a PO to replenish that, and then documenting everything that's been in there, and also using the receiving application to get that information into Maximo. All right, so if you're watching this on the replay, I want to put up my contact information here. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm going to turn it over to Kat now for the live conversation to open the line.
So what I'm going to do is we actually have our chat line open. I'm going to have you let me know if you would like to ask a question, and I will unmute your line. I do have, okay, I've got one person that would like to be unmuted. Let me go ahead and click them.
Yeah, it's Mike Barbier, but we're with Mike Robinson and that as well too. So very straightforward the process you went through. Can you talk to some of the assumptions that are required to enable that easy flow? So for example, single sign-on, security access, catalogs in place, contracts in place, pricing in place, link back to a material master in your own system that connects to an ID or a catalog number. Can you talk about some of those assumptions?
Yeah, so we're not using any third-party software, right, for the integration. The concept would be that, yes, you did have an existing an account with a vendor. Otherwise, right, you could set one up, and we would be able to integrate to their existing catalog. So the way this came about was that we had an existing Grainger customer who wanted to kind of reduce those clicks and the manual steps. So as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of up to you on what you want to maintain and what your process is. So if you want to let the supplier maintain that entire item catalog, you're going to be able to pull those details in from each of the purchases. So those line items could be converted from a material to an item, right, through a process, and you could store those catalog codes for future reference. As far as single sign-on, my understanding is that it would be a single account for your vendor, right, for Grainger. So that would be really the requisition of the purchase order would be built for whoever was the creator of that initial record. That answers the question.
So if I have 6 people that have access to do purchase requisitioning, there's no special magic that has to happen to punch out to any catalog, whether it's Grainger or anybody else. There's no magic that has to happen.
Well, I think that's going to be based on a security question, right? So I think that might be something we have to take offline, because each one could be different, right? Or do you have protocols in place to say they can only request so much? Most likely there's going to be another. I think we may be able to dig into that one a little further.
Can items purchased be added to the item master? Can vendor charges on items be updated automatically in Maximo, such as manufacturer part number?
So just taking the first question there, can items or materials be added to the item master? Absolutely. And that's what we showed with the last minute addition of that faucet, right? So that was something that was created as part of this demo to say this is in our item master already, and that's why that line item came in as that line came in as an item and not a material like the other two. Please.
Can vendor charges on items be updated automatically in Maximo, such as manufacturer part number?
So I'm not sure I understand the question. We are returning the manufacturer part number. If there are additional charges, those could be added as a line item or updated within Maximo, right? The assumption being this still not an approved PO for fulfillment, so it would have to go back to Grainger or whoever your vendor is, right, for final review.
How many vendors are supporting this?
So Canada and U.S., right, whether you use Acklands or Grainger, are supporting it. We have a catalog set up with Dell, and there are another number of other companies that have Punchout catalogs that you can hook into. So I think it would become more of a specific question of if you had a vendor that you wanted to connect to, if they have a procurement solution.
If the vendor offers that API or that type of interface, we can connect to it. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so if there are specifics, you can certainly email me, and we can talk about which ones and how to.
How many parts can be assigned to an item on an item master?
I think that one I'm going to have to take offline. I'm not sure I fully understand the question. So if we can capture a name there, Kat, we'll have to get back to that.
I did have a question is what is required for vendors to upload and publish their catalog online? That would be up to the vendor.
Specific. Yeah, so the idea is that they are already maintaining that catalog, right? So they're doing that, whether they're doing it just online through their main Grainger.com website, or if working directly to a supplier's site like we did in the demo. There shouldn't be any additional requirements.
We do have one other question. If we choose not to use PO or PR with the item, do you think the item master is still worth using? So I would imagine you'd go in there just to update your item master.
Yeah, I think that would be a discussion, right, with us and then Grainger specifically, or to say, are you going to download that? Really, how much did you want to download to update your catalog? And are you getting real-time pricing, or if there are changes in that? And then how are you checking availability? So I think that might be a further discussion. The solution today was certainly around increased efficiencies, reducing our manual entry, and being able to streamline that process.
Do you have to alter the description names of your existing items in order to match the vendor description?
We'd have to look into that one further, right? But my assumption is that we're keying off the catalog code and the model number, so I don't believe so, but we can certainly take that one as a takeaway.
Is there a validity period for the pricing? What should happen if the prices change while getting it approved?
Right. So that's going to be vendor by vendor, right? But I think as we talked about the future enhancements, as you want to go through a revision, we are exploring this to say how can I update my current pricing?
Are purchasing contracts considered?
Yes, that is something that we talked about in future enhancements to say how can we go through and create releases against those.
We did have a question again about how many suppliers are compatible with Maximo system.
This is not out of the box. I guess that's the thing to mention, right? This is a solution that we've worked out. As I mentioned, there are no third-party tools using to connect to these e-procurement solutions. So that really is going to kind of depend on a case-by-case basis. But I imagine that it's a pretty high number.
And right now we've got about 4 or 5 that we actually are connected with, that we have made that connection with.
Right. So Grainger and Dell are the ones that we're demoing.
Okay. Do you know if vendors usually provide a manufacturer and manufacturing part number? Does the integration support pulling these details?
Yes. They usually do, right? And I think the more detail that they can get, and the example that we went through for the flange, we did pull those details in, but that, again, would be specific by the vendor. So what we saw earlier, the answer would be in that demo, yes.
Is there functionality to collect quotations from multiple vendors via RFQ?
So that one right now, the answer is no, because we're talking about multiple vendors and also the RFQ application. So I think that's a future enhancement. If we're still using the same protocols to connect, that's certainly something that could be done as well.
What is the end-to-end implementation time?
That's a tough one to answer as far as everyone's process and pace is a little bit different. This is a lightweight solution. There is an integration to build it, but it is relatively short.
Okay, so relatively is that months, days, years?
It's certainly not a year, right? I would say about a month.
Okay.
So again, it's going to be specific to size and scope. That's very nice.
What logic is used to auto-populate the IMR when the catalog number is pulled into the PR? Vendor to vendor, part number assigned in the IMR record? Question.
And that's a technical detail. I don't think we're going to get too much into those, so that's part of the integration. That's something that's coming across through the NIF.
Is there a cost for the vendor to set this up?
Most of the cost is on the vendor, right? They're the ones who, in Granger's case, have built this e-procurement suite. So there is no additional cost for this. So if it exists already, with the two integrations we've done, there was not a charge for our clients to set it up or to continue to use it, right? Where this is a service they offer as part of a streamlined process to be able to connect to them quicker. No additional cost from the vendor side.
Okay, great. Yeah, so the vendors don't have to subscribe to us to use it. We automatically will use, if they have a system in place, then we're good to go.
Right.
Is it possible to get PRs or POs for services such as rental cars, rental equipment with definite or indefinite timelines?
The logic is there. So as long as that vendor offers that as an option, we certainly could. Just be a change in the line item and type.
Cool. Is this solution hosted on premises or cloud?
The implementations we've done have all been cloud, but it could be done on-prem as well.
All right. And how is this licensed?
There's no additional license. That's the simplicity of the solution, right? So as I mentioned, you would need an existing account with your supplier, and you would need to have your Maximo license, right, to be able to launch from the PR or PO applications. But there are no additional costs around that.
Yeah, but I believe the question is more as the tool itself, how we're connecting is not a license, it's a configuration. Correct? Has this Punchout solution ever been implemented for a Maximo SaaS client?
Not yet, but I'm certainly willing to explore it. I think it's very doable.
Is it possible to upload supplier lists in Maximo for some small suppliers or suppliers with less IT support?
The demo today or the webcast was around the e-procurement solution, so it would depend. If you're just uploading an item master or a list, then you can certainly do that through a number of means. The question would be, the follow-up would be, are they trying to build a connection to that supplier?
How is the solution secure on cloud?
Yeah, so I think we can take that one offline, but it's the same way that any integration within Maximo, right? It's coming through the NIF. We're using secure connections, and I think that warrants a longer conversation than I see right now, but I'm more discussing.
Have you built Punchout from self-service requisitions?
No, we have not, but we can certainly do that.
Our organization uses a different procurement system for non-facilities orders that also use catalog Punchout. Can we connect to the same catalog connection?
Yes, I believe so, right? I think that's a specific use case that we would probably need to discuss, but assuming it follows the same protocols, the short answer would be yes. So we need to talk.
Again, we will put this up on the website within the next day, and we appreciate your attendance. We hope everyone has a happy Halloween.
Thank you. Have a good day.